Thank you, Myron, for that kind introduction. It's always a pleasure to be here at the Chamber. And as Myron said, I am very active in USMCA. In fact, immediately after this, I'm leaving to go down to Virginia for some sessions with folks there. And then after the Paris Air Show next week, I'll be in Charlotte, North Carolina, and some other places. So we are really pushing to get the USMCA through the Congress. That's not my main reason for being here today, but since Myron mentioned it and a lot of you are interested in it, I thought I'd mention that. I thank the USIndia Business Council for the opportunity to participate in your 44th annual meeting. When I was back in the private sector, I was an active participant myself in that council. I thank you for your efforts and dedication to enhancing the economic and strategic ties between our two democracies. And I give my congratulations to Prime Minister Modi on achieving a strong and decisive mandate from the people of India for his second term in office. As President Trump has said, we look forward to working with the Prime Minister and his administration to address our mutual trade opportunities and the mutual investment potentials. As some of you know, Commerce Department just completed its 6th annual Select USA Investment Summit, which was held over the past 3 days, just a few short blocks from here up Connecticut Avenue. It was an unequivocal success with a record number of attendees. In fact, we had to turn away from some people, even though we did expand for an overflow. India did a very, very strong participation. Their delegation consisted of 97 executives who are considering investment in the United States. And India's delegation was the 4th largest of the 78 countries represented at the Select USA Summit. We hope that they'll go even farther up that list and maybe be the #1 source of delegates for next year. So that's a challenge I would give to those of you from the Indian side of the equation. India's foreign direct investment into the United States totaled $13.1 billion by the end of 2017. And if you are in the audience here and were among the attendees at our summit, thank you for your participation. Select USA has generated $104 billion in new investments since it started, and it is our country's biggest venue for foreign direct investment. The message we sent to the delegates is that the U.S. is the really good place in the world to invest, and that this country is open for business. The administration has been addressing a more balanced and reciprocal trade relationship, not only with India, but also with all of our other trading partners around the world. The U.S. is the least protectionist major country, and we have the trade deficit to prove it. Yet other countries are highly protectionist and have huge trade surpluses. U.S. has 0 tariffs on 61% of the total value of our imports, and that involves more than 17,000 different categories of products. On thousands of additional products, our tariffs are lower than what other countries impose. For example, India's average applied tariff rate at 13.8% remains the highest of any major world economy. A few examples: it has a 60% tariff on autos and 150% on alcoholic beverages. On motorcycles, it's 50%, while ours is 2.4. Its bound tariff rates, the maximum level which it could go to on products, is much higher both than the actual tariff rate in many cases and certainly far higher than ours. For example, its bound tariffs on agricultural products average 113.5%, and some are as high as 300%. High tariffs, non-tariff barriers, and unfair trade practices by our global trading partners have cost our nation entire industries, good-paying jobs, and lost innovation. These protectionist practices also hurt those countries themselves. They breed companies in places like India that have not become globally competitive and therefore ultimately are impeding their own local economies. Back in November 1975, President Nixon designated India as a beneficiary developing country for purposes of the generalized system of preferences. That was just a few weeks after USIBC was formed at the request of the U.S. and Indian governments to advance our commercial ties. No one at the time could have predicted that in 4 decades, India would become the world's third largest economy, and with a growth rate projected to reach about 7.3% this year. Nor could anyone have foreseen that by 2018, bilateral trade between our countries would total $142 billion, and that the U.S. would not only have a goods deficit with India of $21 billion, but surprisingly also a services deficit of $3 billion. That's a real imbalance. U.S. companies produce and offer innovative, world-class goods and services, and they are enthusiastic about doing business with India. Last month, I led a delegation of more than 100 U.S. companies to our Trade Winds conference and trade mission in New Delhi and other Indian cities. And while there, I spent an hour with Prime Minister Modi a week before the election results were finalized. I hope that now that he has received a strong re-election mandate, he will carry through on the reforms he and I discussed. But even more important than the specific items is the mindset of moving toward a more open economy. I truly believe that both India, the United States, and India's other trading partners all would benefit from that direction of change in thought process. As it is, the United States is India's largest export destination. And India, while it has a population of 1.35 billion people, is only the 13th largest export market for the U.S. This imbalance is due importantly to overly restrictive market access barriers. I explained to the Prime Minister and others in the government while I was in New Delhi that the U.S. trade rep would hold off on its GSP decision until after the election so that it would not interfere with it, but that the USTR substantive concerns need to be addressed in order to avoid negative decision. They were not addressed, unfortunately, and therefore because, to quote from the President's proclamation, India has not assured the U.S. that it will provide equitable and reasonable access to its market. President Trump therefore terminated India's GSP designation as a beneficiary development country on June 5th. We will continue to work diligently with the Indian government and with our private sector partners to eliminate barriers to U.S. products. During my former career, I made a number of happy investments in India and even owned SpiceJet at one point. That experience has helped inform my understanding of the challenges U.S. companies face in the Indian market, but also the opportunities that are available to them. U.S. industry is confronted by both tariff and non-tariff barriers, particularly including e-commerce rules, data localization restrictions, price controls on medical devices and pharmaceuticals, and tariffs on ICT products. These barriers, some of which unhappily are relatively new, impede the development of viable commercial relationships. For U.S. companies, we need more predictability, more transparency, and more consistency of regulations. But we also know that India has been making progress. In the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report, India climbed an impressive 32 spots this year to rank 77th out of the 190 countries in the survey. We're encouraged by India's efforts to improve the business climate and attract investment at the subnational level. Many U.S. companies find it advantageous to take the approach of working through their states to establish partnerships and identify customers in India. For this reason, we are eager to advance our cooperation between U.S. states and Indian states to open trade and investment opportunities for businesses in both countries. We are working through the U.S.-India commercial dialogue to strengthen trade investment ties through the U.S.-India State Spotlight Series. We appreciate USIBC's leadership role in promoting greater trade and investment engagement among U.S. and Indian states, including making it a central topic of the Council's current program. So thank you for hosting this Ideas Summit and for your commitment to promoting the U.S.-India commercial relationship. We welcome your thoughts and recommendations as we strive to open opportunities for businesses that will create jobs in both India and the United States. Hopefully, you will develop by the end of your conference some specific items that could reasonably be accomplished in the very near future and set a path toward more extensive, longer-term reforms. We have work ahead of us, but I myself am planning another trip to India in the near future, and I will be using that opportunity to advance your ideas. A plethora of opportunities for both nations will always make it possible for us to overcome any temporary obstacles to doing business between the two countries. We have a lot in common: two vibrant democracies, a rich heritage together, and many years ahead of good tidings. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing our discussions. Have a good morning.